Labour is cancelling elections, silencing over 10 million voters. And yet the media says nothing. If this were Reform or the Conservatives, there'd be outrage.
It is a Friday afternoon stroke evening, and we've got to settle ourselves into the weekend. So let's welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, our very first shipmate, in the form of Councillor George Madgwick, who's the Reform leader of Portsmouth City Council. Good afternoon stroke evening, George. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you for asking. Now, understandably, Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of running scared of the voters as he paves the way to cancel even more elections across the country. Labour have invited 63 councils now to postpone next year's local elections, which by and large that is sort of the midterm test, isn't it? The litmus test to see what people think of Starmer's leadership and give the public the opportunity to boot out councillors that they don't think are serving their purpose anymore. And this means that more than 10 million people more than 10 million people have been denied the right to vote, have essentially been disenfranchised. And half of the councils that are now going to go way past their sell-by date happen to be, yes, you guessed it, run by Labour. Now, methinks if this was any other party, particularly, let's say, if this happened to be a Reform government cancelling elections, the screams of tyrannical regime, fascism, autocracy would be resonating through every single newsroom on the front page of every single newspaper. And yet somehow the audacity of the Labour Party, they just get away with it. What's your reaction to this story?
Yeah, I mean, what a month that Labour have had, right? You know, is this the month where they've proposed about cancelling jury trials and now cancelling the second year of elections in a row? Only yesterday we found out they're cancelling their lobby sessions for journalists in the afternoon. You know, this has all got the hallmarks of an authoritarian dictatorship government. And it's something I never expected to see from a Labour government, to be completely honest with you. But you are right. If this was happening on the other foot, if this was the Conservatives or Reform that was suggesting to cancel elections, there would be outrage. And I think the people need to realise at home, we've only ever had 4 elections cancelled in our entire living memory, which was obviously the war. We had the cancelled, obviously, for the war, and obviously we had cancelled for COVID, and then obviously last year, and then obviously potentially this year. You know, we don't cancel elections in this country. We run through them. And after the last World War, we had an election within 2 months. So this whole narrative of that the civil service isn't ready to hold elections and we've got to streamline things, in my opinion, just doesn't simply brush. In relation to councillors and then delaying elections, I'm a real firm believer that the councillors are elected for a 4-year term. They've got a democratic mandate for 4 years. One singular day past that 4 years and they lose their mandate, in my opinion, and the people are ready to vote.
It's the blatant hypocrisy of all of this as well. I'm surprised you say you didn't expect it from a Labour government, really? You hadn't been reading enough of the warning signals then. But, for example, the reason they're doing this, of course, is because dozens of councils are going to be abolished or merged with a push towards creating more unitary authorities. So, therefore, the way that elections are held, the constituencies, the borders, etc., will all change in time. And so, you know, the Labour Party might reason, well, it's easier and would save money if we just wait and do the elections when all of that process is finished and all the unitary authorities are established. And yet, I remember back in 2019 when we had expressly voted to leave the European Union, and people on the Labour benches, including the shadow Brexit secretary, who was that again? Oh, that's right. It was Sir Keir Starmer, wasn't it? I remember, because they refused to listen to the democratic mandate of the people and denied us our choice at the ballot box, we ended up having to have blimmin' elections, which then got people elected for all of about 6 months. I know, I was one of them. So what is the problem here? Why can't they do it again? This is latent hypocrisy on top of things like getting rid of the jury service, bringing in things that were never on the manifesto. Bridget Phillipson telling the Supreme Court they've got it wrong on their ruling of biological sex. I'm afraid these people really do think that they're above any form of other authority, particularly the authority of the voter. They're taking the demos out of democracy.
Yeah, and they're running scared. That's what they're doing. They're running scared. And Nigel said yesterday it's becoming a banana republic, and it's right. If you remember, they cancelled elections last year for, what was it, 7 million people last year, under the excuse that we would have the mayoral elections this year and local government reorganisation. That's why they did it. And then obviously, so they cancelled last year's elections and moved them to this year, and now they cancelled the mayor elections for next year. And now they're saying about cancelling the elections again for the local government reorganisation. Is absolutely rubbish. What they're doing, and I'll tell you this because I say I've sat on, it's very boring, Alex, but I've sat on this local government reorganisation board where we consult on this stuff for the last 18 months now. And let me make this clear. Currently, right at this very second, they are deciding how these new local governments are organised. The constitutions, the chief executive officers, all the key officers are being decided in the next 12 months. They do not want to lose control of that decision-making process, because on day one of the local government reorganisation starting, it will be governed, and officers and civil servants will be decided by whomever is in power from May next year. So it's a lot easier for them to delay elections and allow Labour to decide who the civil servants are going to be, who the key officers are going to be, how the constitutions are going to work, because then when reform do take over the following year, they're going to be taking over something that's been institutionally organised by a Labour government, which definitely do not have a mandate to run councils right this very second.
Well,
and it's scandalous.
I'm afraid that bureaucratisation of our democracy is very much cut from the same cloth when it comes to the way that Labour approach things. 30 quangos he established in the King's Speech when he first came to power. 30 quangos! 30 organisations run by his cronies that have no accountability to the general public, who actually make decisions that affect our lives on a daily basis. But there you go. Shall we have a listen from my own mouth? I'm going to read you what a spokesperson for East Sussex County Council has had to say about this. They have said, it is welcome that the government is listening to local leaders and has heard the case for focusing our resources on delivery in East Sussex, particularly with devolution and reorganisation of local government, as well as delivering services to residents as such high priorities. This is one reason we have argued for postponement of county council elections in May. Other strong arguments are the cost to the taxpayer of electing councillors for just 1 year before further elections in 2027 to prepare for unitary authorities. It would also be unfair to expect new councillors to serve such a truncated term. With this in mind, we still believe it would be more prudent for just one set of elections to be held in 2027, and we will repeat this request to government, though it is for ministers to make the final decision. Well, not up to the voter then, is it? Don't bother asking us what we want to do. We don't matter in this at all, do we?
I mean, that roughly translates into we're terrified and we think we know better than the voters. It actually holds the voters in contempt, because what they're saying in that statement is that we don't trust you to make a decision over who should run your authority. So we believe we are better than you and we will run it how we think we should run it. Honestly, that statement is appalling. Absolutely appalling.
Don't worry, they'll set about restructuring the entire government come 2029 and no doubt find a way to cancel the general election if they could. Let us talk about, smash the gangs. They haven't really smashed any, have they? Stop the boat, smash the gangs, on we go. Small boat crossings have soared past 40,600 this year alone. Wednesday saw 497 migrants cross the Channel. Of course, it was a migration day yesterday of the UN. Today is Don't Do Hate Speech Day, by the way, if you want to keep note of the important UN calendar in the countdown to Christmas, lecturing us all. More than 1,000 people made the trip in small boats in less than a week, which of course brings the annual total to over 40,000. Completely undocumented random people have crossed the Channel by small boat. That we know of. That doesn't involve visa overstayers. People have come on aeroplanes and just, happen to lose their passport when they get here. Doesn't involve people in the backs of lorries. The number of people breaking into this country is bound to be far higher. And yet, yesterday, the way that they framed this whole initiative on protecting the integrity, innocence and safety of women and girls was declaring it a national emergency. Now, if they really believed the words that came out of their own mouths, they would know that they could also declare crossing the Channel in small boats a national emergency. They have everything given to them in order to do this. They know that among those people in small boats would be terrorists. They know that the people traffickers are funding organisations such as the Wagner mercenaries, Hamas, the IRGC, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all of our best mates around the world, they know as well the economic strain this puts on the nation, and they can see the fraying social fabric that is happening as a result of not dealing with this, as well as, of course, the daily news reports of attacks, particularly against young girls from these men who are from misogynistic cultures. And so they could do something about this. The fact of the matter is they don't want to. Would you agree?
Yeah, don't get me even started on Hamas. Portsmouth City Council's Lib Dem administration just agreed to twin with Palestine last week, so that's great. And when I raised the concern about this and said that Hamas really needs to be considered, they said that's irrelevant. So don't even get me started.
Twin with Hold on. No, I like the sound of this. What does that mean? Twin with Palestine. What are they going to do? Go and, like, I don't know, do school exchanges with kids in Gaza?
This is the thing, though, Alex, right? Because they've twinned with an area called Bezet in Palestine, and they said about the cultural links and the university links. So this is a real big concern. I don't know what they're considering and whether they think that all of a sudden loads of our students in Portsmouth are going to pop off to Palestine for the weekend to do some education. I mean, it's terribly shocking. We raised some real big concerns over Hamas and the links to the university there has to Hamas, as they've elected a Hamas student bloc 4 years in a row now, and we were told that that was irrelevant to the decision-making process, and I don't understand how that is at all possible. So yeah, we're not very happy with that in Portsmouth right now. We tried to challenge it, but Lib Dems and Labour voted it through, and we are now formally starting a friendship agreement with a town in Palestine to show solidarity with the Palestinian people, in the words of our council.
I mean, I still argue there's no such thing as Palestine. I'm sorry, there isn't, but we apparently now recognise it as a country, so there you go. What a load of virtue signalling, performative nonsense. What a load of utter dreck. I'm going to find out where this Bizet place is. I'm going to have a little bit of a Google of that during the advert break and find out quite who lives there and quite what's going on there. Because I'll tell you one thing, at this glorious time of the year when we remember the birth of the Christ child, guess who can't go to Bethlehem? Oh, that's right, Christians. Why? Because ever since it's been under the control of the Palestinian authorities, all the Christians have been turfed out. It used to be 80% Christian in Bethlehem, and the whole local economy thrived because of pilgrimages and tourism. And then, because, well, the Palestinian authorities took over, the Christians were herded out, they were persecuted, they were badly treated. Now it's being run by Muslims, and no one goes on pilgrimage there because it's too dangerous and the local economy has collapsed. So there you go. When people want to think about Palestine and twin with Palestine, perhaps one of the first things Portsmouth might do is say, hey, how about, given that's the birthplace of Jesus, you let Christians live there and go on pilgrimage there again? That might be progressive.
It would indeed, and they just simply do not care and don't listen. Remember, Portsmouth is the home of the Council of Sanctuary. We're the people that give discounts to kayak lessons via our leisure card, if you remember the story over the summer. You know, we're the council that have the largest amount of migrants here out of any other authority in the whole.
Is that right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've got a huge amount there, and they've actually dispersed them into HMOs and family accommodation. So we've had it in Portsmouth where, and this is factual on records, where they have evicted local people from their homes to make way for government contracts to put asylum seekers into homes.
Hold on. George, you're just hitting me with all these things that I'm afraid I haven't been able to do my research and get my right of reply and be able to testify as to the veracity of what you're saying. But you're claiming that in Portsmouth, families have been evicted from their homes. Is this social housing?
No, it's private housing, and the council have had their right of reply because it's been on Peter Cardwell's show before. But yeah, yeah, it's factual. What they've done is the Home Office have used third-party contractor Clear Springs, who have then instructed landlords, who have then given Section 21 notices to remove local people from their homes and from HMOs, the most vulnerable people in our communities, and then issue government contracts for asylum seekers to stay in Portsmouth.
And what happened to these people? What happened to the people who were told they had to leave their residences?
Are you ready for this, Alex? They live in hotels.
I literally don't even know what to say. So hold on. What we're doing is taking the migrants out of the hotels and putting them in the houses, and the people who rightfully lived in those houses, who are the Brits, have been told to evacuate those houses to then be made to live in hotels instead.
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's ridiculous, not because it's
It's not
funny.
ridiculous, it's evil. It is wicked.
It's absolutely mind-blowingly crazy. I know a family personally because they approached me. This is where the story broke. They approached me, and the lady and her 2 kids ended up living in a hotel for 3 months because she had been removed from her accommodation through a Section 21 because they wanted to make way for a migrant accommodation. That's been published nationwide, so it's a factual story. And it's happened. To say we now have 700 in Portsmouth. We have more migrants living in Portsmouth that arrive here on boats than any other authority in the whole of Hampshire combined.
What's the plan of giving them the kayak lessons in the hope that they might find their way back in the other direction?
Oh, potentially. That was an exclusive on Kevin O'Sullivan's show. But yeah, they did something called the Leisure Card Facility, and they've offered now the Leisure Card to all asylum seekers that live in Portsmouth. It gives them discounts off coffees, off of free trips, going to local classes.
If they're having these discounts, how can they afford this stuff in the first place? I thought they only got like £9 a week pocket money.
I know, right? How can they afford this? And this is what's literally happening in our city. And to say, and now we're twinning with Palestine to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. But when we have a leader of a council that's literally standing on the steps with a sign saying no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here, what do you expect? I mean, this is the issue we're having in Portsmouth right now. It's become really volatile. We've had protests all over the summer, and they're still continuing to this day at the local hotels and in front of the civic offices. And fingers crossed, this is why we need this election in May. I mean, Portsmouth's one of the authorities that have been offered to delay the election. I pray that they do not do that.
Do you know what, George? I'm just astonished by some of the things I've heard from you today. And you're right, no wonder they're cancelling local elections, because I can't imagine the public of Portsmouth having any truck with that sort of behaviour. Thank you ever so much, Reform Leader of Portsmouth City Council, Councillor George Madrick there. Can you believe